The storm approaches. Team Plasma taking over the TCG for the next 3 sets. I think that's the longest out of any evil team I can even think of. Even Team Rocket and whatnot I don't think gets a 3rd set. Anyway, hey guys, this is GamerCow, welcome to another Pokemon TCG history video. This time we're talking about Plasma Storm, and man, there's a fair bit to speak about in this set. 138 cards or something like that in this one, so decently sized set, introducing the new mechanic in Team Plasma Pokemon, and cards in general. It's a tribal tag, but as far as tribal tags go, I mean, this one looks the best. I'm just going to say it now. The blue border on these cards is absolutely stunning to me, and the full art, when they do get full art Pokemon EX and stuff, these two just look so good. This might actually be my favorite full art of the entire era, even if it's not on the best of cards, but we'll get to that. There's no actual promos in the set that are worth anything, but for the World set, the Plasma Freeze, there will actually be a couple of promos we need to talk about, so that's kind of neat. And yeah, the main thing with Plasma Pokemon is they have an interaction with the Plasma Energy, which doesn't do anything by itself, but they have acceleration methods to get it into play, and a couple of the EXs rely on Plasma Energy for like added effects, or just to attack in general, which we will get to. Unfortunately, it's only fully evolved Pokemon that get indoctrinated into Team Plasma, so, you know, no Zubat as a Plasma card. That does kind of suck, because it means that your tribal tag search or discards and stuff like that can't work on the basic stuff, so it makes them a little bit less useful in average decks, but, you know, it is still fine. I suppose you can still play them as you see fit, and there's still a lot of good stuff that you can do with it. So yeah, let's just dive in. We're going to talk about the trainers first, as we usually do, and there's like 3 trainer cards which are holdovers from what should have been released in Boundaries Crossed, but for some reason wasn't. Bicycle is the first one here, and it's a card we've seen before and never saw play at the time, but we've got better resources for it now. Draw until you have 4 cards in hand as an item. This card is insane, but also don't flood your deck with too many of them, because of course it counts itself in there, so if you draw multiple bicycle, you are probably just not getting them to work. But yeah, we've got a lot of discard. Ultra Ball, you know, computer search, we'll get Dazzle Machine, as we'll see in this set as well, and of course supporter cards can be pretty useful there. You could Skylar for bicycle isn't even the worst, you know, like, it's a bad Charon, but it just gives you more versatility that way if you can get the one-of, so that's great. You can recover it with Sableye and just keep on going from there. And yeah, we just have a lot more cards to use now. In decks that don't play a lot of Pokemon, don't play like the world's highest amount of energy, and, well, basically just Darkrai, but you can play it in other stuff too. I've even seen it in Ray Eels before. Not necessarily the best deck, but whatever. This was Mail from Bill in Neo... Oh god, which is the 4th one again? Don't remember off the top of my head. Genesis is the first one, Discovery is the second one, Revelation is the 3rd one. I don't remember what it was called. Whatever, doesn't even matter. The 4th Neo set who had Mail from Bill, which was exactly the same card, and we didn't see it then, but to be fair, early gen decks, at least that era when rotation had hit, kind of have not as many playable cards immediately, so yeah. New supporter card in Chorus is fantastic. This will be in a lot of decks. It's difficult to go too heavy into this one because of the qualifier on it. It's a really bad early game card, but it's an insane draw in the late game, and definitely helps mitigate N for sure. Shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw a number of cards equal to the number of benched Pokemon in play. So this can be a shuffle draw 10, something that we have never seen before. Also, just this is how my brain works to this stuff, if I remember later on. Neo Destiny, I believe, is the set name, so whoops. Anyway, back to Chorus. It's really bad at the very start of the game if this is your only supporter, because like a shuffle draw 2 to 3 cards is probably just going to lose you the game. But if you have this in the later game or even the mid game when both players have had a turn to set up, Shuffle Draw 6 is Professor Oak's new theory. That is really, really strong. It can go further than that, which is absolutely fantastic. Plus, it has a really cool looking full art too. So there you go. If you're playing this in a dedicated Plasma engine, this is a Plasma card as well, which can help out too. Mostly for the grunt that we'll see down the bottom. Chorus Machine is the way that the Plasma decks tend to be so aggressive. This lets you search your deck for a Plasma Energy card and attach it to one of your Team Plasma Pokemon. So this is where it gets frustrating that the evolutions do not count, so it's mostly just the basics that we're going to be looking at here. But this lets you accelerate the energy from the deck to your Pokemon, which is absolutely ridiculous on an item card. I don't think we've ever seen that, to be honest. The only item acceleration we've seen so far has been like Energy Pickup and Dart Patch, which are from the discard pile. Searching from the deck is ridiculous, and yeah, this paves the way for future card design, I suppose. Very, very powerful card, especially with the EXs in the next set. Escape Rope was a holdover we should have gotten last set, but yeah, just printing stuff didn't work out. It is Warp Point, and this is how Warp Point will be named from here on out. Each player switches their active with one of their bench, the opponent switches first, and then you get to choose afterwards. So yeah, super cool card to have back in the format. Doesn't stay in the format all the time, but when it does, it's pretty neat. And it's in the current standard format too, and it definitely sees a lot of play in like Lost Box and stuff. So really good. Ether is another energy acceleration from deck, technically, which is really crazy to see two in the same set, right? This was the other holdover we should have had in Boundaries Crossed, though. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it is a basic energy card, attach it to one of your Pokemon. If it's not a basic energy, put it back on top of the deck. So it does blank any extra Ethers that you have in hand. And there aren't the best ways at the moment of manipulating your top deck. We have Pokedex, which is legitimately not the worst with this card. And I guess you could use Mershana if you have the energy in the top two, then you could top deck that and then draw the other card. There's a Lunatone in this set, which looks at the top two that we'll get to later on. So there are technically some ways of seeing a couple of cards deep, but not like super huge. It's a very risky card, and most decks aren't going to be able to play it. But it can energy accelerate from deck to the active, so yeah, could be used, I guess, if you play a ton of basic energy. Eviolite gets a reprint here, just has white, sheen in the background now. It's just, I'm an Eviolite, woo! Hypnotoxic Laser is what this set is known for, however, and oh boy, this card is controversial and a half. It's a Team Plasma card for what it's worth. It is Rocket, the Rocket sets Sleep, but it also has Poison attached to it. The active Pokemon is now Poisoned, this is what it's used for, but if you flip heads, you also put them to sleep, hence the Hypno part of it. Yeah, it's mostly used because it's effectively a plus power. It doesn't hit for weakness, but we can work with that based on the Stadium card in this set. And it's 25% of the time the opponent's not going to be able to move next turn. We do have Keldeo, obviously, but because of stuff like this being so important, and Catcher being so important, and like Ultra Ball, etc, 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 we're at that sort of critical mass where most decks are going to have a really hard time fitting a lot of switch cards in. Which means if you lock them in a sleep for a turn, it's tough. They're not really going to be able to get around that most of the time. And it's just really annoying. So yeah, very strong card, even if it's just for the plus power aspect. But we will certainly get to how to use it better later. I want to talk about the other Plasma stuff, but I have to go over Virbank City Gym first, because this is what makes the Laser so ridiculous. If this wasn't released in the same era as Laser, I don't think it would have been as controversial. Stadium card that puts 2 more damage counters on poison Pokemon between turns. Yeah, so now that's a triple plus power for a Stadium that stays in play, and then your stuff. It's ridiculous. It is far and away the strongest Stadium that we have available. Tropical Beach is still really insane, but Beach is not nearly as good with this around. You do still need Beach for a lot of decks, but the problem with this is the amount of space that it takes up. is another reason why evolution heavy decks are suddenly very hard to play. Sai is going to play Scolipede this round for synergizing with the poison stuff, and it was a real hard time building that deck to get anywhere with it. So yeah, because you've just got to fit so many extra things in. It's tough. And discard, because it can just steal games on a 25% chance. A lot of people hate this thing. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it doesn't put me off the format at the very least. So yeah. Plasma Frigate is a stadium that you might counter Virbank with. It's a bit of a benign one. Most of the time this isn't going to do anything because it can just get countered, but each Pokemon that has a Plasma Energy attached to it has no weakness. This doesn't actually have to be on a Plasma Pokemon. It just has to have a Plasma Energy attached. So if you do end up using Plasma Energy as a manual attached to a non-Plasma Pokemon, it still has no weakness. Could be pretty good. The amount of things that Terrakion has killed because it's weak to fighting, and now you could make it not weak to fighting by playing a Plasma Energy, that's pretty solid. Problem is, this gets countered by a Virbank and then you get hit for weakness again, so yeah. But as a counter stadium, you could do worse. Team Plasma Grunt is the main reason why the Plasma tag is so important here. It is a Plasma card itself, as is the Frigate, so you can discard that too. Discard a Team Plasma card from your hand, draw 4. Draw 4 is very, very powerful text, and we don't usually see this too much. The best that we had was like Felicity's Drawing, I think, which was discard 2 in order to draw 4. Any 2, but still, this goes up an advantage. Draw 4 is very powerful in an item-heavy format like this, and you can discard excess Chorus machines, excess Chorus themselves if it's not going to be good. You can discard your Plasma cards here. You could technically discard Plasma Energy, but you probably wouldn't want to. And unlike Juniper, if you have multiples in your opening hand, you could discard another Team Plasma Grunt and draw 4 with that. So, fantastic draw card for the Plasma stuff, and it is not usually like a staple for or anything, but you certainly can build an engine around this if you want. If you don't want to play stuff like N too much, you can play, or you don't want to play too heavy a Juniper count potentially, you could play this instead. Like I said, Plasma Energy doesn't do anything. It's very much the same sort of thing as Legend Maker's React Energy, where it just enables other things to do stuff, so yeah, that's what we'll go for. And then the A-Specs they're pretty solid. Dazzle Machine is the competition for Computer Search in most decks. You discard 2 from the hand, just like Comp Search, but then you put a Trainer card from your discard pile into the hand. Trainer now, of course, is the overarching term for Supporter, Stadium, and Tools as well, actually. This lets you get any one card back, so you can recover a Supporter card. This could be your 5th N if you need it to be. But you can also recover stuff like, you know, Hypnotoxic Laser, or even Random Receiver if you had to. You can recover stadium cards, like this could be an extra copy of Tropical Beach if that gets bounced. It's an incredibly powerful card in its own right. It's just the consistency of Computer Search is often more difficult to give up than you'd like, but this is certainly the second best A-Spec ever, and there's a lot of places where you could use it. You could use this with Sableye. Instead of getting the search consistency, you then get to recover your supporter card every turn, and that's pretty solid in its own right. So yeah, extremely good card. Scramble Switch is my favorite A-Spec ever, because I just love the idea of this. This is probably, in a vacuum, I think this is the most powerful one, personally. But it has to compete with the consistency of search anything out of your deck, or take any trainer card out the discard pile. So most decks aren't going to play it, but the ones that can are absurd. Switch your active Pokemon on one of your bench. Then you may move as many energy attached to the old active Pokemon to your new active as you like. Obviously, Ho-Oh is the first thing that could come to mind with that. You rebirth it, you get it into the active, you scramble switch away, that's free energy you can move to something else of importance. However, this does not just move basic energy. This moves special energy as well, so this can act as a stronger energy switch in certain decks. And of course you are moving all the energy away from your old active, which means that you can then max potion that active and effectively get a heal for very little. This card is absurd, and if you do end up getting a chance to play it, it's gonna do ridiculous things. And there has never been a card like this again in the history of the game. And there wasn't one before this either. It's just ridiculously cool. Obviously, being a switch as well means that you can use it to get out of the status condition stuff as well, so that can help. Just having an extra switch card can obviously be good. And yeah, I love it. I don't know if I'm going to get to play it, because I don't think any of the decks I'm most interested in want it, but it's awesome. Not much more to say. Victory Piece works with the Victini EX that we're about to see in a sec, and despite being a tool-based thing, this is more like Crystal Edge than Crystal Wall. It's attached to a Victini EX. You can use its attacks for no energy. Yeah, the 0 energy attack is back, but only for Victini EX. This card is great because Victini EX is great, it's just very risky. And we can talk about it right now, because the EX is the next thing to do. Victini EX is a 110 HP EX, just like the Shaman and the Celebi. It has a 1 energy retreat cost as well, so Sky Arrow Bridge compatible is pretty solid. Although, how often is Sky Arrow going to get played now? I don't know, but it's a low retreat cost, that's always good. 1 Fire Energy, Turbo Energize, lets you search your deck for 2 basic energy cards and attach them to your bench in any way that you like. This is ridiculous. Energy acceleration for any type, including fighting, is absurd. Fighting is such a good type in general, right? For this era, that being able to accelerate to them is so good, and is one of the reasons why I couldn't build Terrakion EX last round, because there was just no good way of getting Terrakion set up. This allows you to do that, and it's really cool. So yeah, you get to just accelerate energy to your bench and work from there. Really solid. Intensify and Burn for a fire double colorless only does 50, but if the opponent is an EX, it does 100 instead. This will be relevant when fire is a relevant weakness on EXs, but that doesn't come until Plasma Blast, which is post-rotation. But even so, the fact of you can technically do this for 0 energy if you put a Victory Piece on. There will be times where doing 100 is super good. This could play into Mewtwo at that point by doing, 100 for 0. Pretty good. Also lets you use it with some other cards as well to, I guess Mew could technically copy this. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do with it, and I really like this card. It's just very risky, because 110 HP is super small, right? But hey, sometimes giving up those 2 prizes to accelerate fighting energy into play is worth it, right? Articuno EX is a 170 HP Plasma Pokemon, so you can discard it with Grunt. It's got 1 retreat, so that's pretty solid. Again, Sky Arrow Bridge, quite useful. And then it's got 2 attacks. Blizzard for 1 water and 2 colors, does 60 and 10 to each of the opponent's bench. Finally, we're getting rid of that stupid condition of flipping a coin, and if you flip tails, it does 10 to your bench. Never understood why Blizzard did that. I guess it was balancing in the original version, because, Articuno was really solid with Blastoise, so some sort of limiter on it, I guess. It's never been good since then to have that, so I'm glad they finally got rid of it. But it's mostly the second attack we're interested in here. Frost Prison for 2 water and 2 colorless does 80, which is awful, obviously. However, if the Articuno itself has got a Plasma Energy attached, you auto-paralyze the opponent's Pokemon. That means you can't use double colorless, of course, because, well, I mean you can, but it'd be silly to, because 2 colorless in the cost. But auto paralysis in a format with Dusknoir is devastating. The catch is it's a 2-prizer, obviously. You can accelerate this with Chorus Machine a little bit, though, so it can be sort of teched in. You could technically build Blastoise with this, I guess, but it would be very clunky to do so. You still need the Dusknoir as well, so deck spaces can be really tight there. But with decks not being able to play as many switch cards on average, this will come up quite a lot, being able to just lock the opponent in. So you do the 80, you also paralyze, they can't get out, so they have to sit there, and then next turn you move those 8 damage counters away with Dusknoir to their bench, and just keep the lock on. If you can capture in Keldeo in order to stop them from having access to, rush in, you can potentially just win the game by shifting all the counters and stuff around. And this is far more effective than the Flygon thing that Pepper was trying before at doing that. It's just the expense of the attack makes it very hard to do. But yeah, next set, Plasma deck stuff can use it if they want to. They probably don't because it's not like efficient, but there is a deck that can work with it, so yeah. Cobalion EX is actually pretty cool in general. There's 180 HP on this thing. It's a metal type, so it's resistant to Psychic and weak to Fire is not that relevant in most matchups. And 2 energy retreat is annoying. It's like the worst retreat to have at the moment because it's too expensive for Sky Arrow to reduce it to 0, but it's not expensive enough to Heavy Ball Search it. And Heavy Ball Searching this would have been fantastic for the deck because it's going to work in Klinklang, and Klinklang is Heavy Ball Searchable, right? For 1 Metal Energy, Righteous Edge does only 30 damage, but 30 for 1 is pretty good. We've seen that on Landorus right now, yeah? And it has the discard a special energy effect, so pretty good into the Plasma decks. You can remove Plasma Energy. Good into double colorless, good into like blend stuff, and yeah, solid attack in general for just 1 energy. Steel Bullet for 2 metal and the colorless does 100, and its attack damage is not affected by weakness, resistance, or any other effects on the defending Pokemon. Not being affected by weakness is really annoying because this is one of the few metal types that's actually playable, and not being able to hit for weakness is important next set when Kyurem comes out. And yeah, can't one-shot it, it's really silly. But Steel Bullet does go through effects of attacks as well, so you actually don't have to play a Sigilif answer in order to win with Cobalion EX, because Sigilif Safeguard does nothing in the face of Steel Bullet. So yeah, it's solid overall. Metal decks do have a place in this format, as we'll see from the Klinklang up above, and it's alright. Lugia EX, you can technically play this round, but you'll probably have a really hard time doing so. 180 HP colorless Pokemon, it has a 2 energy retreat, so bleh, whatever. Fighting resistance, lightning weakness. Yeah, the lightning weakness isn't quite as relevant with how much fighting is going around, but it can still be a little bit rough sometimes, just gotta be careful about that. Its ability lets it take an extra prize if it KOs by damage. That's it. That's the ability. Very, very dumb if it actually works. This is really good against single prize stuff for the most part, but yeah, it turns them into multi-prizes for less HP. My Ninetales deck would be in shambles at that. Really don't like seeing this card. But it's a little bit expensive just now. For 4 colorless energy, Plasma Gale only does 120 damage. And you have to discard a Plasma Energy in order to do anything with this attack at all. So you can't fuel it with 2 double colorless and expect to work. You have to have Plasma Energy as well. You can do 2 double colorless and a Plasma and then just discard the Plasma, but that's wasting energy, right? So yeah, it's fine. And next set, it's arguably the best way of playing Plasma. There's several different ways of doing it, but this is definitely up there. And yeah, card's insane, but we don't quite have the support for it yet. We need the acceleration, especially the recovery side from Thundurus EX, and we need the damage output from Deoxys, because we can't use Hypnotoxic Laser to get extra prizes with this thing. So yeah, you need to be hitting like 160, etc. to make it work out. 150, 160, that sort of range. Very strong, just not for just now. There are a few EXs in this set that don't have full arts for reasons. I think there were like promo releases in Japan or something and just didn't ever get the full art treatment. One of them is really, really good too. Black Kyurem EX is the new Blastoise deck. You'll have a hard time playing it this round because of the heavy discard. We don't have superior energy retrieval until next set, but still, 180 HP. Free energy retreat, so this one actually does work with Heavy Ball, and that's good because Blastoise also does, so you can add a little bit more consistency to that engine now. It's weak to itself, so I mean that doesn't matter for the Black Kyurem side of it, but it does matter for techs that you can play against this deck. 3 colorless energy, slash does 60, not impressive in the slightest, doesn't one-shot anything really relevant, and 3 colorless is ridiculous for that. Sometimes you'll have to do it if you miss the Black Ballista, but it's not really an attack you ever want to use. Speaking of Black Ballista though, 2 water, 1 lightning, 1 colorless. 200 damage, discard free energy from this Pokemon. So, obviously, first off, 200 damage. Even through Eviolite, that one-shots everything in the game at the moment. So, this is your 2-prize machine against every Pokemon in the game. 2 water energy instead of 2 lightning is a much better cost to pay than the Boundaries Crossed one does. So, this lets you fuel it with Blastoise, and it's fantastic. And yeah, discard free energy is very expensive, but it means that you're less vulnerable to Mewtwo than Keldeo would be. So, it's really good. Not much else to say. Blastoise Keldeo was arguably the best deck in format last round, and this one is not quite as good yet, but you can still play like masses of energy retrieval and stuff like that. So if you build around it, it's fantastic. Just probably don't play like 3 of it this round, because I think it's too expensive for that. Also, maybe a little bit less consistent because you've got to get a lightning energy too, so maybe you've got to try and fit energy search into the deck. But it's a deck that doesn't need Hypnotoxic Laser and stuff like that, so you can still just play it without having to do that stuff. Really cool. White Kyurem shares a lot of the same traits. It's got the 180 HP, the free energy retreat, which is great because you play this with Emboar, and Emboar has a couple of cards that are heavy retreat in the line, so that's good. It's got the same slash attack, so really don't want to play into that. But for 2 fire, 1 water, and a colorless, you do White Inferno for 100 damage. Not great, but it does 10 more for every damage counter that's on White Kyurem. And you could play Crystal Edge and do plus 50 with this too if you really wanted to. This is dual typed but power crept Regigigas CX, funnily enough. Right? Regigigas for 4 colorless did 50 plus 10 for every damage counter that's on it. This just does 100 flat, so that's fantastic. But it has the same trappings as the Black Kyurem in that you need to have extra energy of different types. You need to accelerate fire with Emboar, but then you have a water energy that you need to put on, so that's kind of annoying. You don't really want to play Prism energy with something like this because it could get enhanced hammered and that would be sad, and you can't energy retrieval it or something like that anyway, so And unlike the Black Kyurem, this keeps its energy, so it's a bit more vulnerable to Mewtwo. But if the Mewtwo can't one-shot you, then you just obliterate it back, so I guess there is that going for it. Personally, I prefer the one from Boundaries Crossed, because that with Crystal Edge could do 200, or with Laser Virbank you do 180 at this point, so personally prefer that one, but I could easily see why people would want to play this one instead. It wasn't a popular deck, it wasn't a common deck, but hey, it's there anyway, worth noting. And then the other two are the other 2 legendary birds. For some reason, Articuno is the only one that gets the special treatment this time. Kind of weird. Both of them have 170 HP, 1 energy retreat, just like the Articuno. But they both have a 2 energy attack as well as their 4 energy one. The 4 energy one is what I'll go over first because they're both the same. Zapdos and Moltres both do Power Volt or Power Flame, I think it is in Moltres' case. 80 damage for 2 lightning/fire, 2 colorless. And if you have a Plasma Energy attached, it does 40 more damage. 120 for 4 is still not amazing numbers, but if you can use this in a deck that has multiple weakness types, it could be fine. The draw for Zapdos, annoyingly enough, is the first attack, where for Lightning and Colorless you do only 30 damage, but if you flip heads, it's agility, literally. If you flip heads, you prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to this Pokemon during your next turn, or the opponent's next turn. So, Victini, of course, is in format. So, with Victini, you have a 75% chance of just being immune to everything. We don't have the damage mods for this at the moment. This would be more like an XY thing when we have Muscle Band and God, what's the other one? I mean, we've got Laser Bank and stuff at that point, and Deoxys, right? So you could start making this do like 80, 90 damage or something, but even then, it's still too weak, to be honest. So, yeah, very annoying deck, but because Catcher is in the format, it's really not a problem. The Moltres does the same thing, but it has Destructive Flame, so instead of being agility bound, it discards an energy from the defending Pokemon on heads. So, that's kind of cool. I mean, Crushing Hammer deck, I suppose, so you've got a 75% chance of 75% chance of discarding stuff if you flip with Victini. That's cool, but it's weak to Blastoise, so like it immediately dies to a Keldeo that's got water energy on it, and yeah, it just doesn't do enough here. You're not really going to be able to use the fire typing too well on this thing, so gimmick and nothing more. Finally, let's look at the non-EX stuff that's in here. Torterra is only noteworthy because it's, for some reason, it's resistant to water, even though Torterra isn't, whatever. It's 150 HP water resistance, and it can technically deal with Keldeo, but it doesn't even do it all the time, so whatever. Heavy Ball searchable in a couple of mons on the line, though, so that's kind of neat, I suppose. Cherrim has an ability that lets you heal 20 from one of your Pokemon that's got a grass energy attached to it, but it's a 70 HP stage 1, so that's obviously not going to work. The Infernape is kind of cool. 130 HP, pretty big for an Infernape actually. 0 retreat, solid enough. 1 colorless energy, so 30 damage, and it prevents the opponent from using one of their attacks next turn. Kind of neat. And then for 1 fire and a colorless, you do 120 damage, but you gotta discard all the energy that's on this Pokemon. Clearly this is to synergize with Chorus Machine. If you can go Chorus Machine, attach fire, then you can stream this attack. But that's a lot to ask for, and we can't recover the Plasma Energy at the moment. So yeah, it runs out of steam too easily. But Torment is pretty solid in a format where a lot of Pokemon don't have multiple attacks. So that's kind of cool. The Lampent over here has only 70 HP, but it has no retreat, whilst it has no energy. For some reason, we didn't get Plasma Chandelure in this set. That's next set, but oh well. It's building up to it, I suppose. Heatmore is a very funny deck, not a very good one, but still. 90 HP, so it's level ball searchable. Luring Flame for 1 fire, switches your opponent's active with one of their bench and burns the new active, so that's kind of cool. And Fire Elixir is what you need this for, or what you play this for. Free fire energy. Discard the top 4 from your deck, and it does 50 for every fire energy you discarded. The deck literally played like 35 to 40 fire energy. This isn't really good ever, but if you're ever going to play this, it would probably be in Flash Fire, when you have access to Muscle Band from X and Y, and Blacksmith, so you can accelerate discarded fire energy onto the Heatmore, so you can actually power these things up. Probably never going to see it, but if you do, it would be then. If you feel like playing a meme deck for the round, that's what you would do. Manaphy is kind of interesting for Blastoise decks. 70 HP, Water type, basic here, 1 retreat, so I guess that's pretty solid. Final Wish is what you want it for. If it gets KO'd by damage from an opponent's attack, you search your deck for any 1 card and put it into the hand. That's pretty neat. We saw this on Jirachi before, and it was cool. The only reason that Jirachi didn't see a lot of play is because of the first turn rules. If we could have played a supporter going first, then it would have been way, way better. Seafaring, though, is an interesting attack. For 1 water energy, you flip 3 coins, and for each heads, attach your water energy from your discard pile to your bench Pokemon in any way that you like. So it's a weird one for stuff there, but sometimes you do have to just like discard a ton of energy, whether it be choice or otherwise. And, you know, like just Juniper away free energy or something. There's not much you can do about it. But this does give you a way of recovering those energy if you so choose. And if the opponent KOs it, well, that's your rare candy searched, right? So it's alright. Probably not going to see it played, but if you were to tech it, I wouldn't be against it. Beartic is one that I have a little bit of memories of, because I did technically play this in fun stream games at sometimes. 130 HP Metal Weak water type is pretty solid, the water typing being good against Landorus obviously, and the metal weakness meaning it doesn't get hit by common stuff is pretty good. 2 attacks on this thing, 1 water and 1 colorless to do Powerful Rage, which does 20 for every damage counter that's on this Pokemon. Same thing as Dark Rush, I believe it was, on Zoroark, except this time you've actually got more HP, and it's got a colorless in its cost that you can charge with Chorus Machine. For 2 water and a colorless, it does 90 and discards the top card of the opponent's deck. 90 is enough to one-shot Lando via weakness and 2-shot EXs, so that's fine. And then if they hit you and don't kill you, which 130 HP stage 1, it's not the easiest of things to kill. If they don't kill you, then you can catch her in something and KO like a 180 HP dude, so it's cool. Only problem is 2 water and the colorless is a little expensive. You don't really want to play this in Blastoise, so yeah. A little bit awkward. Magnezone is interesting. I don't think we've got a strong enough supporter base just yet for this to work, but I mean 2 consistency supporters in a turn would be great. During your turn you may play 2 supporter cards. Simple as. Gyro Ball is cute, but you're never really going to want to attack with this thing. 2 lightning and a colorless to do 80. Switch this with one of your bench, and then the opponent switches their active as well. They get to choose though, like they get initiative, so meh. Free energy retreat, so it's heavy ball searchable. That's about the best I can give for it, really. There's a fun deck when Delphox comes out, so you can play this with, but by then that's because we actually have some consistency stuff for it. I don't know. If Rotom wasn't fighting weak, I'd actually really enjoy this card for the Rayquaza decks, because it's just really funny. 60 HP fighting weakness means it just dies to Hammerhead, that's why it's not playable, but the Electro bonus is neat. For a colorless energy, discard a lightning from the hand, draw 3. That's exactly what you want to do in Ray decks, so that's why it's cool. And Poltergeist for a lightning colorless makes the opponent reveal their hand and does 20 for every trainer card there. We don't have item lock that isn't exactly Gothitelle right now, and Gothitelle has to be active, so there's no way of locking them from having lots of items and stuff in their hand, but it's cool nonetheless. Crobat draws a card when you use it. Woo. Ultra Toxic Fang, I guess, is funny if you play it with Virbank, because it does like 6 poison at that point, but meh. Weezing is interesting. It's unfortunately not level or heavy ball searchable, which is a problem for it, but if it gets KO'd by damage from an opponent's attack, you discard the top 3 cards of their deck. But more importantly, Smogbank for a Psychic and Colorless does 20 to each of the opponent's Pokemon. Cool. Spread deck, it could be a thing. It's not the best one out there, but I mean, it could be worse. Unfortunately, Laser kind of messes with the math here a lot, right? Because if you get KO'd by Laser, you don't mill the top of the deck. So, I don't know, but if you're using it as a spread option, maybe you don't need that. Gallade is cool. Ultimately, not really that strong, I don't think, because Acceleration is still too hard for this deck to work with. 140 HP, in the same line as the Gardevoir that doubles your Psychic energy on Psychic Pokemon. So that's at least neat. And it works with the attack, because Powerful Storm for a double colorless does 20 for every energy on all of your Pokemon. So think of this more like a more stable Darmanitan, where instead of flipping coins for the energy that's on the one Darmanitan, it does a set amount of damage, which is a decent bit less, but it does it for every energy that you have in play. So you can spread your energy around, you can make sure that you don't have too many things on like the incorrect spots and whatnot. But the problem is, like, Guardy is a 110 HP stage 2, which you need in play for this to work, and yeah, the Gallade itself just doesn't do enough otherwise. At least it's not completely vulnerable to Mewtwo, but you're probably just better off playing Mewtwo with that thing instead of this, unfortunately. Giratina doesn't really do a ton, but Shadow Claw, I guess, is kind of fun. It's a heavy ball searchable Psychic type that's not weak to Mewtwo, but I feel like you probably don't want to bother with it. Hex is at least interesting, though. Psychic double colors to do 50, 50 more if the opponent's affected by a special condition, you know, from Laser. So it can do 130 for free, basically. Free energy. So that's neat, I suppose. If you need a Psychic type in Plasma, I guess you could do worse. Trubbish is not good for a couple of sets, but is actually its own deck, which is very funny to say. Tool Drop is really, really good. 20 damage to every tool card that's in play, both yours and the opponent's. Right now, that's not going to do a ton of damage, because you can only have one tool in every Pokemon, so assuming that you have 6 Pokemon out with 6 tools in play, that's 120 damage on a 70 HP guy that doesn't have Acceleration. However, by the time this gets good, there are several things that you add to the deck that actually make it work, and we will get to those in Plasma Blast, because that's when it's most important. The Garbodors don't do anything, so nobody cares. Donphan is for the distant future. 130 HP stage 1 is really solid. 4 energy retreat means you could heavy ball search it, but the catch is that it's weak to water, so that's kind of annoying. Spinning Turn for one colorless, not colorless, I wish it was. 1 fighting energy, do 40 and switch to the bench. This is solid. I mean, you could use this in like a Flygon deck or something, so you could do some damage, then spread, go back. It's pretty cool. And then Wreck for 2 fighting and 2 colorless. You don't usually see this, but sometimes you get up there. 80 damage, but if there's a stadium in play, do 60 more and discard that stadium. Anti-synergy with Laser is awkward in this exact format, because that means that you don't get to play Laser to do 170 with this. So that's annoying. You can still do 150, mind you. And yeah, 140 on a fighting type is very powerful, right? That's just gonna blitz so many things. Spinning Turn is really solid, but having to go, I mean, Fampi at least is 80 HP, so there is that. But having Catcher be an automatic win against this, basically, and not really being able to synergize with the laser side of things, it's not there yet. But when the fighting type gets their dedicated set in X and Y, this is still in format, and it becomes very powerful at that stage, especially when Robo Substitute comes out. End of 2014, this card is a menace. The Lunatone I mentioned before, this is heavy ball and level ball searchable, so it works with whichever sort of thing your deck wants to do. And Premonition lets you look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put them back on top in any order. Now, it might not sound like a lot, but I do remember seeing play from time to time, so I'll have to keep an eye out. I don't remember exactly what it was played in, but I'll look up some deck stuff and see. There's a decent amount of discussion on it, I think, so yeah. I mean, the Lucario is interesting, but it's not level or heavy ball searchable, which is annoying. If it has any metal energy attached to it, it's both metal and fighting type, so you could technically use it with a Klinklang that we'll see in a sec. And Hurricane Kick for a fighting double colorless does 60 plus 30 for every prize the opponent has taken. So it kind of racks up decently quick. It can be a fighting type in a metal deck, but it does force you to split the energy a fair bit. And the problem is the Riolu is never able to be a metal Pokemon, so it has the same sort of Swablu issues that make it very difficult to play in the Klinklang deck. Skarmory is part of that Plasma engine that you could play for this 90 HP, so lovable, searchable. 1 Retreat Pokemon lets you discard a Team Plasma card from your hand to draw 3 on a colorless energy, so that's cool. I mean, N disrupts it though, but still, not the worst. Nothing else notable about it, but it is a Plasma card as well, so you could discard excess Skarmory to draw 3, so that's kind of cool. And then Klinklang is very neat. 140 HP, 3 retreat, so you can heavy ball search this one still, which is really good. Psychic resistance can be nice too. Plasma Steel, as the ability, prevents all damage done to your metal Pokemon by EXs. EXs are the big thing in the format, obviously, so being able to be immune to them is really good. It is only immune to the damage, but most EXs are pretty linear in the sense that they don't actually do that much that isn't just straight damage. So yeah, all of your metal Pokemon in play get protected by this. Heavy Bullet is something that's worth noting because it can actually come up. It's a pretty bad attack by this era's standards, but 2 metal and a colorless, you do 70, and if you flip heads, you do 20 to one of the opponent's bench. This is actually Diamond and Pearl 1 in Poleon's attack, and that was a world beater, but not now, right? It's too weak at this point. However, it is worth noting just because you have the gear shift gear, even Klinklang as well, to like move your metal energy around. This turns that Klinklang deck from a toolbox sort of thing that relied on blend, prism energies and stuff like that into a pure metal deck that now just is trying to stop the opponent from damaging you. And that's pretty good. I mean, Cobalion is pretty solid against most 1 prizes, and you know, the Klinklangs can be really good for max potioning and stuff as well. It's still a tank deck after all, so yeah, most decks are going to have a hard time dealing with it if it gets set up. The last main card to look at here is the Snorlax. This was its own quad deck and Burdis' favourite deck, I believe, actually, from what I played in the past. 130 HP basic, 4 energy retreat, so you can heavy ball search it. It is, of course, a Team Plasma card, and it really wants to be a Team Plasma card here. Its ability prevents the opponent's active from retreating so long as this is in the active slot. Snorlax has done this before, but it was on a promo card that we just didn't have enough copies of, and I really wish I could have played that. It's my major regret from like Gen 2 is not being able to play that card, because I think it would have been ridiculous in that format. But oh well. For 5 colorless energy, Team Pat does 30 for every Team Plasma Pokemon you have in play. This did see play as a one-off in Team Plasma decks on occasion. It was able to disrupt the opponent's game plan, and Team Pat could get up to 180 in a dedicated Plasma deck. If you play this in a Quad Snorlax deck, it's only going to do 120 at most, but what you've got to remember is that you're playing this with Hypnotoxic Laser with Virbank, and you're able to just stop the opponent from ever retreating, so they have a really hard time getting to what they actually want. Imagine not starting your attacker, and your opponent just flips up Snorlax, and that's all they do. Again, switch cards don't get played as much in this era because of the space limitations, so this kind of effect is really good in this exact era. It's actually in format now as well. There is a Snorlax that has this ability still, so it still does it even today. Very funny. The last two, the last 3 Super Fringe cards here that aren't really good, but just to note abilities and stuff here. Togekiss, when it's active, prevents the opponent from playing any items that have any effects on your Pokemon. Well, it doesn't stop them from playing them, but it stops them from working on your Pokemon. So no Catcher, no Crushing Hammer, etc. But it doesn't do anything whilst it's active, right? It's 30 damage for 1 colorless and draw until you have 6 in hand. Doing only 30 means you just can't do anything with this. And even with Donphan here, we don't have the hit and run stuff to make it actually work. So, unfortunately, there's not even an attack that you can copy off the basics either. And Togepi is a 40 HP fighting weak Pokemon here. It gets donked by everything, which is miserable. Exploud is round 2.0, but it doesn't have the Loudred with round as well, which is bad, and it takes 4 colorless to do its round, so whatever. However, there are 2 very funny things about this one. First off, the round is 50 times the number of Pokemon you have in play with a round attack, so you could go ahead and do some massive damage with this, even though it takes 2 double colors to get there. And Destructive Sound is a very irritating attack against a lot of decks. For 3 colorless energy, the opponent reveals their hand and you discard all item cards that you find there. Yikes. But yeah, just too much on the stage 2. And then finally, the only other ability here is the Braviary. It's in the worst spot, 100 HP to retreat, so can't search it with the free search cards. And then if this Pokemon is your active, you may have the opponent switch their active with one of their bench. They get to choose what comes in, which makes it basically unplayable. But, you know, it's there anyway. Wild Edge is also just not strong enough as far as stuff goes here. 60 for free energy, but if you do 80 instead, you do 20 to yourself. Just no. Absolutely terrible. But some people tried to play this when Catcher got errated. They were bad players, but they tried anyway. And that is it. This set has a lot of very fun stuff in it. A lot of things which are not amazing by themselves, but next set would be really cool. And yeah, of course, Hypnotoxic Laser changes absolutely everything. So, but yeah, there's a lot that you can do with this set, and many of the decks I've wanted to play have been waiting for this set one way or another. Hypnotoxic Laser and Virbank are important for my Ninetales stuff. The Ether even is pretty important for the biggest meme deck that I am going to show off, I hope, if I can reverse engineer it at least. And yeah, Victini was needed for the Terrakion stuff. I don't know if Pepper's going to play it, but he was certainly messing around with Victini Terrakion when we were building our other stuff, so we'll see if he gets there or not. Yeah, and then of course there's Klinklang as a way of stopping the EX spam or keeping them honest, right? So, pretty cool. Anyway, that is enough for this set. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you found things interesting enough. And we're going to rush through this one because a lot of the stuff here wants the next set to be like super good, and we'll spend a ton of time in the next set anyway. Pepper's got to leave us for a little bit for 4 rounds of stuff, like 2 weeks basically, so we have plenty of time to just do Worlds format in probably my favorite year of all time. And it's just biased because I came in on this year, right? But there's a lot of the decks I've had the most fun playing are in this era. So, yeah. Till next time, though, thank you for watching and take care.